At this moment, I'm sure many students in front of video have questions. That is, what's the difference between axios and fetch? It looks like they have very similar syntax. They both support something called promise, and they all have then, and they all have the response. But what is the difference? Let me open 03 fetch API, because in here we're also trying to get 5 random jokes from Chuck Norris. In other words, these two are equivalent. Okay, so they're getting the same kind of data. In axios, we're using get URL and one then. In the then, we have one response. Response.data contains the 5 jokes. All right, now let's go to fetch. Now in fetch, this is a little bit tedious, right? There are 2 thens. It's the same URL, and this method is optional. So we can either have this or not have it. That's not a big problem. But there are 2 thens in fetch, and there's one then in axios. And more importantly, this response here is different from the response in axios, because this response is not a JSON data. So we have to use response.json, this extra step, to convert it to JSON. And this is the data we need. But in axios, we have one then, and this response is already in JSON format. So we no longer need to convert it. By using axios, we can cut out the middle step of passing the results of the HTTP request to the .json method. Axios just return the data object you would expect. So it's very convenient. So my point is, if you can use axios, why use fetch? To make things more clear, I have put them side by side. So this is how we use fetch to fetch 5 jokes, and here's how we use get to achieve the same effect. In this case, we print response. Here, we also print response. And here, we also print data. Here, we print response.data. In each case, we got 2 outputs. So let's see the difference. This is the response in fetch. As you can see, there's nothing, the data we want is not in response. Now we have to use response.json to convert it to data, and we can get this data. So this is the one actual step. Now in axios, if you print response, here is the response, and you can see response is already in JSON format. But response has many other attributes that we do not need. We're only interested in the data attribute in response. That's why in this then, we really want response.data. So the 2 examples have the same effect, they're equivalent, but as you can see, this is shorter, this is cleaner. So my recommendation is use axios.